What's going on, guys? BladeZilla here, and today I've got a real cool one for you from McNees Knives. This is the Dixon, a new release just prior to Blade Show 2025, and let me tell you, a similarly kind of manufactured and executed knife to their popular series, the PM Mac 2s, or just the Mac 2s in general. And you know what? Different design, a little bit bigger, a little bit more going on with the knife than the previous couple gens of the Mac 2s. But for the McNees Knives fans out there, there's a lot to like here, and it should feel a lot like mom's spaghetti in a lot of ways, which is a good thing. So sit back, relax. We're gonna have ourselves a cup of coffee today. Talk about knives. If you're in the mood for beer or wine or whatever, absolutely go for it. As a reminder, guys, and more than anything, check out BladeZilla.ca, where I just literally put some of these guys up on the site. I've got multiples of each, pretty cool. Lots of Demcos that just arrived, Shiros, Protex, Microtex, CKFs, some new BMKTs, Koenigs. Oh, there's lots of good stuff on BladeZilla.ca. But we're not here to talk about BladeZilla. We're here to talk about the McNees Dixon. So where to start? She's a beast. So we should probably get some measurements. Let's see here. Overall length of about 8 3/4, possibly more, maybe 8 1/2, depending on the angle of your eyeball. But I'm saying 8 3/4. A blade length of sharpened about 3 3/4. So a big blade compared to the PM Mac 2s, which I think were 3" and 3 1/2" respectively, or were they 3 1/4 on the small? I can't remember, but I think the popular one was 3 1/2. Handle length of 4 5/8. And we will get that closed handle measurement on this as well, which looks to be unchanged. There's no blade protruding, but just why not? There we go, 4 5/8, same thing. The reason I do that obviously is sometimes when you close blades, part of it will stick out the other end, and in this case, nada enchilada. All right, let's get a weight on this guy. It feels really solid, much like a Mac 2. So let's see here. I'm saying 4-ish ounces. 5-ish ounces. 5.3, 5.4, 5.3, 5.4, somewhere in there. So not even close on my guess. First of all, I'll acknowledge that. I can own that. I apologize. But then again, it is a real live measurement, and I'm usually wrong. So there you go. This batch of Dixons that I got in, there's 4 versions that I got. So plain tie, stonewash, as they're calling it, which is this, a bronze, a green, and a blue. The blue, the bronze, and the green all have accents of the bronze in it. So the 2 that are true to color, I guess, would be full bronze and stonewash. So figured I'd grab a stonewash and talk about it. So the first thing I notice, if you've ever held a Mac 2, is just the action is almost identical. So it could be the ergonomics of the knife. It could be just the way they put it together. It feels like a Mac 2. Feels like a McNees knife in hand. I will say the milling on this seems to be a notch higher, in that you can kind of see if there was no stonewash, there's a lot of gorgeous lines kind of hidden throughout this knife, which really makes for a very gorgeous appearance up close and personal. The clip, very similar, kind of a basic clip for the price point of these knives, which I think they start around $100. You can table more for the Dixon than the Mac 2s, depending on configuration, obviously. The Mac 2s you can take right up there with all the fancy milling and finishings that they do, but for a stonewash one, I think they're about $100 more table. They come currently in Magna Cut, which I thought said it on here, right there, which I thought I saw as well as like a 63 hardness, 65 hardness range. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of what they were doing. We have the Made in USA logo there, or just McNees the USA flag, magnet cut there as well. And then the McNees logo on the other side of the blade, which is nice. Obviously that blade has a nice cutout there for kind of thumb flicking, reverse flicking. It can kind of do everything. The difference in this knife, I'd kind of say, if you look at the overall profile, it's very Mac 2-esque, other than this nice big cutout for that blade where there'd be a thumb stud. So, you know, it's in the same spirit, like the fit, feel, finish of this knife feels very much the same, other than the blade for some reason just feels a little, I don't know, maybe it's a hollower grind blade, I don't know. It feels just better. The action seems to be there, and that could be a result of that additional 1/4 inch blade length on paper, a little bit longer, a little bit more material, not sure. It just feels to me like the action is just a little bit more improved. I believe the hardware is identical. Still have Torx bits for the pivot and the back. Although I will say it looks like one of them is a little more countersunk than the other. So I'm not sure if that's by design or what the deal is there, but the back one definitely is a little more countersunk. And if you go on the other side, it is the same there as well. So that back hardware is a little sunken in. We don't have any drilling for a lanyard hole on the knife. Although, could we put one on here? I'm wondering if you could attach one on the standoff. I don't know how close it is to the blade. I'd have to look a little closer, but as far as the knife itself, there's no drilled hole for a lanyard. In terms of the action on it, from that cutout, or sorry, not the action, the ergonomics, my finger fits in it quite nicely. So if you want to, you know, kick it out with that finger, you absolutely can. Your thumb can absolutely get in there as well. You can slow roll it, which is my preference, in front of a camera lens. It's great. I've got no real issues. It's definitely a slicier knife. From my perspective, this hollow grind is very, very, very thin and slicey. And in hand, it's hard to kind of put into words how thick that blade is compared to how thin the bottom of that blade is. So quite hollow, and I don't recall the Mac 2s being like that. So unless I'm wrong, could be wrong. Like I said, I am used to being wrong. I am a married man, so happens often, whether or not I am wrong. In terms of comparables in this same kind of price point, or just comparables from my collection, and remember, the bottom of the screen tends to kind of exaggerate the size. Well, let's start off with the standard Sebenza small and large, just to kind of get some wind in the sails here. Or actually, let's go Zahn, because that's what's next. So there's your small Sebenza, which looks minuscule by size. A little scary, eh? Let's go to the Zahn, classic Zahn Life. This is an S45 VN base model. Nothing too fancy whatsoever on this one. We'll grab the large Sebenza. This is a drop point 31, also S45. So I don't know why they're all leaning back that way, but they sure like to lean. So size-wise, very similar to a large Sebenza, as you can tell, lengthwise, overall length. Handle-wise, a little chonkier. You know, it's a little less treadmill, but still very much a good size. Definitely stronger, right? So there's that. We can get into a couple other ones here. I've got my Hinder Eclipse with the tie scales, similarly sized, bit bulkier, rougher around the edges, I'd say. We can go into the Spartan Harsey Large as I rock that knife all over the place. Much bigger knife, I'd say, just overall, and just in heft in the hand and rough edges. I always thought the Spartans were kind of a cross between like a Hinder and like a Sebenza, because they are on phosphor bronze washers. And then probably the closest knife I have in my collection currently would be the Stang Pyrenees to the Dixon. So this one's I think it's 1.5 years old, somewhere around there. So they may have made improvements on this knife, but this is a locally made knife in Canada, in Alberta. Derek Stang from Stang Blade Works. And it's hard to look at these two knives and not see striking similarities. Both obviously with that nice big blade cutout, drop point, but just the overall titanium kind of manufacturing ability and stuff. I would put the Stang at a higher level personally in fit and finish. Just overall, if we look at this knife, I've done a video on this knife in the past. They're very hard to find locally, and not only that, just the demand here in Canada for them is high, but I don't feel like there's much demand for these elsewhere. So it's still very young in its life cycle for a brand, and I'm assuming once these catch on, they're going to be impossible to get. But a real nice kind of hand-finished mid-tech out of Canada. And to me, that's the closest comparable I have to the Dixon. And just funny enough, picking the two up, this guy feels a little lighter. So is there a lot of skeletonization inside? If any, I can't really tell. I don't think they do a ton, but yeah, there's some pockets taken out here and there. Not at a sheer Goroff level or anything like that, but remember, this is a medium-priced kind of knife in that very highly competitive space where, this knife is what a base model Sebenza would kind of run you. And it's got features that are over and above a Sebenza, right? For example, bearings. For example, internal milling. For example, a blade cutout. So lots going right for this knife comparatively to a lot of other knives on the market. But that Stang would probably be the one I'd compare it most with. Yes, I can do a sheer Goroff here. I'll grab my Monkey Edge frag. I don't want to go too much into the Shiro line, as you're starting to get into a price point that really we're not comparing apples to apples. But size-wise, there's your Quantum. That's a Monkey Edge frag, Chromax blade on single row bearings, not multi-row bearings. Super classic knife. This one's a few years old now, and I've had it in a number of videos and carry it all the time. So there you go. There's a little rundown, as Jim Halpert would say, on some cool knives that are fairly comparable. I did want to check on the centering on this. Dead center, excellent. As I've had a number of knives come through from McNees, and one of the things I've just noticed is the blade centering, just like having Striders. They're all put together and made by hand, I find, and there's just a little variance on a lot of the Mac 2s that I get in that, sometimes you do have to center them. Whereas this one, out of the box, and at least the show knives that I took pictures of for the site, they've all been like dead center, which is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. A couple little details that are going to kind of go unnoticed, I find, on this knife. On the Dixon, for example, where that cutout is for that blade, see how they put a nice little bevel right on the frame in front of it? So that really adds depth to where you can kind of activate that blade from. And it's actually found on both sides, if we look at it. So a very simple solution to something that just allows you to get your finger engaged in that blade a lot quicker and a lot more comfortably. A lot more comfortably. That's a great, nice little saying. Than otherwise. So the lack of that bevel makes the drop from the top of the frame into that cutout just further. And it doesn't feel quite as natural. And that was the first thing I noticed, where when I open this guy up, I go, wow, that feels a lot closer than it is, because the handle's thick. It's a big knife, but that feels closer than expected, both on the reverse flick as well. So pretty cool, nice little detail. The other thing is, as far as cutouts go, a lot of the McNees stuff, they tend to be work knives. People really like them. They're made to be used, abused. They're not show knives that go into a safe and into a vault that no one ever looks at. Jonathan really preaches, use my stuff. You know, it says be nice, but use my stuff. It's built to last. So the size of that cutout, this is where I'm going with this, the size of that cutout is very much in line with if you've got a work glove on, you're still going to be able to use this knife. And you're not going to gloss over that, get stuck in it, whatever. It's made to be used. Speaking of which, there's kind of two holds, I'll say. So I've got an extra large glove hand, and let me just contort around this to show what I'm talking about. You go, okay, 3 3/4 inch knife. Well, I feel like you think you'd have more handle material based on where that cutout is. But if you move forward on the handle, right, it opens up a lot more opportunities because it is flat in front of the cutout. So if you do want to kind of choke up on it, instead of that cut or the bend being the choil where you can kind of choke up, much like, let's grab the Rosie so you kind of know what the hell I'm talking about. There's your Rosie. So you see how the choil, what kind of choil is built into the frame where you can kind of choke up on it and move forward, right? They've kind of given you that opportunity here as well. So if you want, you can move forward on your grip on the knife, and man, the Rosie just sets the sensor of the camera right off. I love stonewash stuff because it doesn't bounce light all over the place here. So if you do want to hold it forward, you absolutely can, which opens up obviously a lot more room on the handle. For me, I just like holding it in where you probably should hold it, and that way your thumb lines up nicely on the blade, which doesn't have any jimping either. Kind of surprising as well, in that, you know, being a work knife, you think that would be a little rougher there, but hey, that's probably something for V2 I'd probably look at adding. But let's be honest, why would they not include that? That's probably an intentional design choice. Maybe it's not needed. You know, I find that when you don't do jimping on the blade, it's usually concave, which it's not. It is elevated off the handle, and if you look at the angle, it rises up, so your finger kind of naturally stops there as well. But it would be nice to have jimping nonetheless, just my opinion. I will say as you go down the blade as well, they don't let up on any of that blade. It doesn't pinch in, there's no beveling, nothing like that. So if you want to choke right down on this thing, you can, right to the end if you want. So very usable. So in terms of lockup on the knife, let's take a look here. We are coming in at about 25%, maybe on the hair on the left side. I don't believe they use an over travel stop or a lock bar insert. As far as I can tell, there may be a lock bar insert hiding in there. I can't really tell. I don't have my light. But as far as this one goes, I don't see an over travel stop, which means the frame gets factory bent in. And if you push real hard, you can probably bend it past the other way. I obviously don't condone this practice, so I'm not going to show that. But just be aware of that. Action does not suffer as a result of a nice hard bend as either, so it seems to work real nice. Really, no issues on this thing whatsoever. Beautiful new design from McNees. I think they're going to be wildly popular, just like everything else kind of in that series and in that company. They've made some heavy hitters and are fastly charging through the pack, offering tremendous value at a really good price point, loaded with features that you'd kind of expect being an American-made knife. They're pumping volume. They're doing some cool things with colorways. Obviously, the designs are top-notch as well. So really digging the McNees Dixon. Really impressed that they're able to make this at this price point in the US with that frickin' thin ground blade, hollow ground blade. Oh, it's a thing of beauty. I've almost cut myself 3 times as I'm going through this video, just like brushing up against it. I can feel my skin just slicing gently. So I may have some cuts, I don't know. But that blade is just beautifully sharp and well done. And even the finishing inside the cutout is just well done as well. Top-notch stuff from McNees. I've got a little batch in the store right now. Hopefully I'll have some by the time this video comes out. But I think they're going to be a popular knife just based on the fact that a lot of people like the Mac 2s. And you know, any new design with a blade cutout tend to be pretty popular. What else can I kind of spot on this one that I haven't said anything about? Well, I guess the pocket clip leans on the frame instead of the lock bar, which is nice little feature there. Reason being, if that is bent and pushing onto the lock bar, it tends to be added pressure to the blade, which maybe that's their workaround for the lack of no over travel stop. The clip kind of provides that support as it leans onto the frame, but also kind of provides a little bit of a cover on that lock bar as well. So that's a nice little detail. I think that might be it. As far as the Dixon goes, big Dixon energy. She's definitely big, robust, and I think made to be a nice user. That's a beautiful blade. So get them while you can. I think they're going to be produced in volume just like the Mac 2s, so don't, if you can't get them right away, don't be too concerned that, you know, they're making lots of them. So more to come. All right, guys. Well, I think on that note, I'll leave you at there. Check out BladeZilla.ca. Go on YouTube. Where you're watching this right now, throw a thumbs up. It helps the video. Subscribe every Monday, Thursday, 7 a.m. Eastern is when I put the content up. Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook. There's lots of ways to get a hold of me. But more than anything, check out BladeZilla.ca, where a lot of the cool stuff featured on this channel ends up in the store. So pretty cool. Once again, thanks to McNees, making some cool stuff, some awesome new designs that are going to be wildly popular, and definitely great users. And I'm so glad I was able to snag a stonewash variant. As you guys know, I love my plain Jane knives, and I'm just glad they made a plain Jane stonewash knife as kind of a launch colorway for this knife, because I just think they're so good. So anyway, I'll leave you at that. Appreciate you guys. Have yourself a great week, and or rest of the week, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.